Hi everyone, so gonna have a go at the Shitey Whitey, the Durris shrimp. It's a really popular pattern at the moment, and a must-have in the fly box. Starting with an 8/0 thread, just black uni thread, tying in the back tag, which is a size 25 silver wire rib. This is just a variation, it's just the way I make it. Of course there's lots of ways of making it. Well, there's one way of making it, but this is just the way I make it. Again, I haven't gone all the way back to the splitting the hook there and tied it back in because it's too far back and I just don't like it being that far back. But as I said in one of the previous videos, I've never lost a tag by doing it this way with wire, so should be fine. Next thing for the tail, so I don't necessarily have the exact colours for the tail of the original Shitey, so what I use is a mix of the back of the yellow, so just the off, not full yellow, but just some of the slightly browner yellow. So I use that, and then I mix in for the browner colour the back of an orange bucktail. So this is what gives the kind of brown side of it, if you like. I think it is a specific colour of brown that you use for the original, but I don't have that, which is fine. Like I said, this is just a variation of the Shitey Whitey. It's not the Shitey Whitey, but it's not, I don't think, too bad a one. So lengthwise, probably a hook length and a tiny bit, so tie it in quite high up just to keep a nice level body shape. I haven't mixed this particularly, I've kind of done one on top of the other, so I'm just going to have that a little bit longer in there, like that. Because you tie the back part of the body in silver wrap, I want it all to be level. Then I'm going to tie in 2 strands of olive Flashbou, so just tie one in there and then fold it back. This is probably slightly more green than it is olive, but again, just a variation of the original. Lots of variations of flies, very difficult to come up with an original these days. That's fine, so I'm just going to cut the head of this away. Then for the rib, I'm going to re-tie in some silver 25 again, just get a slightly longer bit here. So re-tie this in here, leave a bit at the front there so it doesn't come out, so re-tie that back in. And then I've got some medium holographic silver as the back part of the body wrap. So just tie that in, which actually right back on that tag brings the tail up to a nice height. So just tie all that in going forward, cover up the bucktail there. Right, so what I do here, which I do on any fly really that I use a body wrap on, especially at the back, I just put a tiny bit of super glue on there just to hold it, because obviously fish have teeth. So I don't really want this to be yanked off on the first fish that it will hopefully catch, so it just gives it a little bit more strength in the body. So I go to about just over halfway there and tie that in. You could bring the bucktail tie in a bit further this way if you wanted to, but I'm not really bothered about that, and that's absolutely fine for me. So next is a bit of green dubbing for the body, and I've got various greens here. For this one I'm going to use this green here, which is a Semperfli Inset Green Olive, which seems to fit the bill nicely for this flight. So I'm just going to wrap it onto the thread. I don't use too much and make it nice and thin. Some people rope it in. This is the way again I do it. So just cover that silver a little bit. So you need to leave a good bit of room at the head for this fly because of the amount of wraps that you have on the hackles. So just tie this in. It's nice and visible on there. So you've got 2 wings and 2 hackles to put on here yet, so you need a bit of space because the hackles are slightly longer. The veins are slightly thicker. Right, so there's the body, all set there. Right, for the first wing, I'm going to use orange fox mask, so hot orange, anything hot orange is fine. And something, you don't want it too long, so the first wing is quite short, and again, don't use too much material because it'll just bulk everything out and make it really hard to tie in. Well, that's what I do. So just a short bit of orange, just as an underwing here, so I'll just tie that in there. It's a nice short wing, probably just before the back of the hook. There, and then for the next wing, I'm going to use Fiery Brown Fox Mask again. This has got a ton of movement in it, so it's a great, I love these. I get these from Andre AM Fly Tying. He does them all sorts of different colours, but I use these a lot, and you can get a lot of flies out of one of these masks, which obviously is beneficial. So for this wing, I'm going to make it longer. So I'm going to go out the back of the hook on this one. And again, something I've been learning, which seems fairly obvious, but you know, it's not something I really knew or thought about, that this fly, because of the differences in materials, moves very well in different types of water. So the bucktail is obviously a stiffer material, so it fishes and moves in faster water, but the fox mask moves in slower water, so you can move it and use it in fast and slow. So next I'm just going to tie in again 2 strands of the olive Flashbou or green. You can get any of this stuff from Andre AM Fly Tying or Vineyards, or Andre does his own, and they're really good. Does excellent fly tying materials. So that's put in there. So the first front hackle I'm going to use again. So the 2 hackles that are used in the original are specific dyes, which I don't have. So I'm just using what I've got. This is a very light Chartreuse. It's an olive yellow, I think, is the original one, but I'm using this because it's what I have. It kind of does a similar thing colour-wise, but it's not the exact. So the one thing that I was getting slightly wrong with these when I was making them to start with, because it was a pattern I didn't really know, even though I've been fishing for nearly 40 years this year, is the profile of these. The original ones I was making, the hackle was too short, so these, the originals, are supposed to have a much longer hackle wing for more movement, with quite a few wraps. I'm probably not going to do as many wraps. I mean, you'd be doing kind of 3 and 4 wraps of these 2 front wings, but I'm not going to do quite as many as that. That's just my personal preference. So there's 2 there. So again, I just strip these off just to give a nicer tie-in at the other end, so there's not feathers, or sorry, parts of the wing just flaring out, so it just ties in nice and neatly in here. Just makes the whole thing just easier to manage. You know, when I started fly tying when I was 6, there was just stuff everywhere. And to be honest, probably not that long ago, it was probably exactly the same. So for me, there's a lot of material in this already, but there's a lot of movement in there too. It's a lovely, lovely colour pattern. Some really nice colour combinations there. So lastly, I'm going to tie in this green. So again, this is kind of like an olive green. Again, the original has lots of different colours in it, but I got this again from Andre, and it seems to do the trick. Or rather, we'll find out this year if it actually does catch fish or not. Not a fly I've ever had in my fly box, but I've spoken to lots of people. It's a fly that you really shouldn't be without. Tube versions of it. This is a size 6 double, which I just like to use for the videos just because it's a bit easier to see. But tubes, either with just, you know, a varnished head or with a silver cone head, work really well on plastic tubes, copper tubes, whatever you fancy, really. Ooh. This hackle's actually really nice because it's just a little bit softer, so it's a little bit easier to tie in without it flailing out. I used to hate using cock hackles when I started fly tying because I just couldn't really manage them particularly well, so the hen hackles I used were much softer and had thinner veins, and they tied in much easier than the cock hackles. But again, something I've learned from speaking to some of the fly tying wizards in this country, if you use the hen hackles are very dense, so actually what ends up happening is you cover up the body with a hen hackle, whereas the cock hackles are just that little bit more translucent. I'm just having a little bit of an issue with this sliding off the front there, so sometimes if that happens I put a little bit of super glue just on the head just to hold the hackle on, just so it doesn't slide down too much. So it's just sliding a little bit there. So what I'm going to do, now this is probably not something that you should do, but again, it's just the way I do it, just to hold it where I want it to and make it look like I want it to. I'm just going to put an absolute tiny little drop just in here, just to help the vein when you're tying it in not to slip. So I'll just tie it back on there. Just going to hold it on there, just where I want it to go. That is where I want it to be. So I'm a bit happier with that. Before it was just sliding off a little bit too much for me, because with using the longer hackle feathers, the veins are a little bit thicker, so they take up more space and they move a lot more than the thinner vein or the smaller hackles. Again, it's not going to affect the fly in any way at all. So currently it looks like a bit of a budgie, but when you slim it back a bit to there, it looks fantastic. So, well, fantastic, it looks good for me. So I'm just going to finish this off there. Bloody vines. And there we go. That is my version, or a variant of the Shitey Whitey.